Picture this: you're shackled, battered, and facing grim judges who believe you've committed the unimaginable, transforming into a creature of the night. Their cold stares cut through you, convinced you're no longer human. Welcome to the chilling world of the werewolf witch trials, a dark, twisted period in history where fear and superstition reigned supreme. This was an era when paranoia blurred reality and ordinary people faced unthinkable horrors, accused of shape-shifting into wolves. In this video, we'll unravel the strange and terrifying fusion of werewolf myths and witchcraft hysteria that fueled these trials. Together, we'll delve into the cultural fears that ignited them, uncover real-life cases of those accused, and examine the chilling legacy left in their wake. Ready to take a journey into the shadows of history? Let's begin. Ever wondered how the idea of humans turning into wolves became so widespread? The werewolf myth has deep roots stretching back thousands of years. In ancient Greece and Rome, legends spoke of humans taking on animal forms, especially wolves, embodying both power and mystery. By the medieval era in Europe, wolves came to symbolize something darker, the untamed wild and the chaotic forces waiting just beyond the edges of civilization. It was a fear that blurred the line between man and beast, sparking stories that have stood the test of time. But by the Middle Ages, everything began to change. The world was gripped by rising religious and social anxieties. With the church growing in power, a dangerous shift took place. Fear of the unknown became weaponized. Anyone accused of communing with dark forces, whether witches, sorcerers, or increasingly werewolves, was at risk. These fears were no longer just whispers or cautionary tales. They became real threats. Allegations of witchcraft or lycanthropy were often met with brutal trials, where superstition fueled an atmosphere of panic and danger, turning innocent lives into casualties of the era's hysteria. But what could make someone a prime suspect for being a werewolf? The answer might surprise you. Accusations often began with something as mundane as a mysterious animal attack or someone behaving a little too strangely. Social outcasts, those who looked different, acted outside societal norms, or simply kept to themselves, were easy targets. In tight-knit communities, being different was enough to attract suspicion. Worse still, once someone was accused, the odds were stacked against them. Proving innocence was nearly impossible in a world where fear and superstition ruled over reason. Torture was a grim tool of the time, used to extract confessions by any means necessary. Suspects were often subjected to unimaginable pain until they admitted to striking a deal with the devil, a pact that supposedly granted them the ability to transform into a beast. These forced confessions were horrifyingly effective, and the more fantastical the details, the more the public believed in their guilt. In a world fueled by fear and superstition, these twisted tales weren't questioned. They became proof of the darkness lurking among them. The trials were a circus of bizarre evidence, and the testimony of so-called experts. These experts often claimed to uncover strange signs, like traces of fur beneath the skin or wolfish features in the accused, supposedly irrefutable marks of a curse. In a climate of fear, these outlandish claims were treated as truth, and the more absurd the evidence, the stronger the conviction. It was a system built on superstition, where the accused had little chance of escaping their grim fate. But what's truly chilling is the psychology driving these accusations. In times of hardship, communities craved a scapegoat, a figure to blame for the unexplainable tragedies that plagued them: missing livestock, vanishing children, failing crops. Pointing the finger at someone and labeling them a werewolf gave these communities a twisted sense of control over the chaos and fear they couldn't otherwise explain. It allowed them to channel their frustrations into something tangible, even if it meant condemning an innocent person to a brutal fate. Now let's dive into some of the most infamous werewolf suspects in history. One of the most chilling cases is that of Peter Stumpp, known as the Werewolf of Bedburg. This German farmer's story from the late 16th century is as terrifying as it is tragic. Stumpp was accused of witchcraft and lycanthropy, a belief that he could transform into a wolf at will. His trial records, which were extracted under brutal torture, reveal that he confessed to committing horrific acts, slaughtering livestock, terrorizing villagers, and even murdering members of his own family. The grotesque details of his confession sent shockwaves through Europe, feeding into the frenzy of werewolf hysteria that was sweeping across the continent. Peter Stumpp's fate was sealed in one of the most brutal executions of the era. After being found guilty of witchcraft, lycanthropy, and a series of horrific murders, he was sentenced to a public execution, meant to serve as both punishment and a grim warning to others. First, he was strapped to a large wheel where his limbs were shattered with a red-hot iron, his cries echoing in the air, before he was decapitated and his body burned. The horrific details of his confession added fuel to the fire, with Stumpp claiming he had made a pact with the devil himself, who gifted him a magical belt. According to his testimony, this belt allowed him to transform into a wolf, carrying out his savage acts under the cover of darkness. In an effort to erase all traces of Peter Stumpp's legacy, his daughter and mistress, both accused of complicity in his supposed crimes, were tortured and executed alongside him. The people of Bedburg, not satisfied with just his death, erected a chilling monument, a pole with a wolf's head mounted on top, serving as a macabre reminder of the alleged monstrous deeds he committed. This grim symbol stood as a warning to anyone who dared to challenge the established order, cementing Stumpp's place in history as a figure of terrifying infamy. Another infamous case involved Folkert Dirks and his family. In the early 1600s, Folkert and his relatives were accused of possessing the supernatural ability to transform into wolves and even cats to attack livestock and terrorize their village. What makes this trial stand out is the way suspicion spread across an entire family rather than just an individual. It's a chilling example of how deep-rooted fear and paranoia could unravel entire bloodlines, turning entire families into scapegoats for the community's darkest anxieties. During the trial, the Dirks family was relentlessly interrogated, with each family member subjected to horrific torture in an attempt to force confessions. Despite the complete lack of solid evidence, the court moved forward based on nothing more than hearsay and the pervasive local superstitions. For the villagers, the accusation of lycanthropy offered a convenient outlet for their deepest fears and frustrations. But the Dirks case also served as a stark reminder of how the accused were often utterly powerless against the crushing weight of hysteria, where reason and justice were no match for fear-driven convictions. The trial of Folkert Dirks and his family ended with a guilty verdict, but the consequences were not as straightforward as many other werewolf trials. Unlike some cases where the accused were executed immediately, the Dirks family faced a series of punishments, each more cruel than the last. In the end, Folkert Dirks and his 17-year-old daughter, Hendrika, were sentenced to death and burned at the stake. The four sons, too young to face execution, were spared death, but were brutally whipped as punishment for their supposed crimes. Their story serves as a stark example of how the reach of hysteria could extend far beyond just one person, ravaging entire families and leaving a lasting legacy of fear. Lastly, we come to Gilles Garnier, a reclusive man living in a small French village who was accused of transforming into a wolf and attacking children in the 1570s. Known as the Werewolf of Dole, Garnier's case is infamous for its disturbing details. Several local children had gone missing, and when Garnier was eventually captured, he confessed, under the brutal weight of torture, to killing them while in wolf form. His chilling admission, extracted under duress, only deepened the fear that had already gripped the village, turning his story into one of the most notorious werewolf trials of the time. At his trial, Garnier described an eerie encounter with a spectral figure who offered him a mysterious ointment, promising to transform him into a wolf and satisfy his insatiable hunger. This chilling tale of dark forces at play only intensified the townspeople's fear, and their growing paranoia quickly turned to conviction. Garnier's reclusive lifestyle made him an easy target, further feeding the community's need for someone to blame. In a time when superstition ruled, his isolation became his undoing, casting him as the perfect scapegoat for the horrific disappearances. Gilles Garnier's trial ended with one of the harshest sentences of the time, a reflection of the public's deep horror over his alleged crimes. Found guilty of witchcraft, lycanthropy, and the brutal murders of several children, he was sentenced to death. His execution was made public, a grim spectacle designed to serve as a stark warning against any involvement with dark forces. Garnier was burned alive at the stake, a fate commonly reserved for those convicted of heresy and witchcraft, marking the tragic end of his notorious tale. These cases, along with countless others, serve as a chilling reminder of a time when fear and superstition eclipsed reason. The werewolf trials, with their grotesque punishments and shattered lives, remain a haunting chapter in history, yet they also offer a sobering reflection on the destructive power of mass hysteria and the all-too-human tendency to seek scapegoats in times of uncertainty. In the face of the unknown, communities turned on one another, and those who were different or isolated became easy targets for the darkest of accusations. So, why are we still so fascinated with werewolves? Even though the werewolf trials are centuries behind us, their legacy still looms large in our culture. From gothic novels to modern horror films, the concept of shape-shifting monsters continues to captivate our imagination. But why do we remain so fascinated with werewolves? Perhaps it's because they embody our deepest, most primal fears, the unsettling idea that even the most ordinary person, someone we trust or admire, could be hiding something monstrous within. Werewolves represent the fear of the unknown lurking beneath the surface, reminding us that darkness can be found even in the most familiar places. And in many ways, these trials serve as a powerful cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers that arise when superstition and mob mentality take over. They show us how fear can distort reality, turning entire communities against innocent individuals. The werewolf trials remind us that when we allow irrational beliefs to guide our actions, we risk losing our grip on reason, with devastating consequences. To sum it up, the werewolf trials stand as a dark reflection of humanity's deepest fears and the extreme lengths people will go when consumed by superstition. Innocent lives were torn apart, families destroyed, all because of baseless myths and unfounded accusations. These trials remind us that when fear takes control, reason and justice are often the first casualties. It's a chilling chapter in history, but one we must never forget, lest we repeat the same mistakes. Next time you hear a werewolf story, remember this. Sometimes the real monsters aren't the ones with fangs and claws, but the ones who let fear completely overtake reason. It's a powerful reminder that the most dangerous creatures are often the ones lurking within our own hearts and minds. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the dark history of werewolf trials, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. What historical mystery or chilling story would you like us to explore next? Thanks for watching, and remember, history is filled with its shadows, and we're here to shed light on them. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the mysteries of the past.